Tonight, family and friends mourning the loss of a young high school football player who died playing the game that he loved. This, as New Jersey school superintendent takes action today, suspending a football team for the entire season following some, at least alleged, horrific reports of hazing. Tonight, we'll have an expert on our panel who's here to discuss the severity of hazing in sports. And we will turn to the race for governor, where the latest poll numbers show that Governor Cuomo still leading, but the margin shrinking over his Republican challenger Rob Astorino. We'll also take a look at where the candidates stand in some of the congressional district races around the region. Plus, Reverend Al Sharpton cuts ties with his longtime pal, Sanford Rubenstein. This as police collect damning evidence suggesting that Rubenstein sexually assaulted a woman who worked for Sharpton's National Action Network. What does this mean for the Eric Garner case? Well, our legal panel will join us to weigh in. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to RFL. I am Richard French, and thank you so much for joining us. And tonight we begin on Long Island, where family and friends saying goodbyes to Tom Cutinella. Funeral services, they were held on Tuesday for the Shoreham-Wading River High School football player. 16-year-old Cutinella, he died last week following a collision with another player during a game. The outpouring of support, it came from those who knew him and some who didn't. At St. John's the Baptist Roman Catholic Church, it was an emotional scene.
Thomas was a very humble and modest person.
God really did reach down and grab an angel. That's Tom Cutinella. That's how he lived his life.
Now, with that emotional scene, and also I should note that the team that they were scheduled to play and everyone from the family and everyone else said they wanted the season to go on, and the team they were going to play volunteered to, instead of having a home game, make it a road game and go over to Cutinella's old high school team. And it just showed how sports, even in the worst moments, can really show some of the best in character. Not the same, however, at another school district, this time in New Jersey. A football program there has been suspended amid some horrific allegations of hazing. The school superintendent has suspended the entire football program, freshman, JV, and varsity, at Sayreville War Memorial High School for the balance of the year. This, as the local prosecutor is now investigating claims of harassment, intimidation, bullying, and even sodomy within the program. Superintendent Richard Labb said, and I'm quoting directly here, the district and the Board of Education are making a unified stance to say no to bullying, that we're not going to tolerate forms of harassment, intimidation, and bullying. Meantime, parents of the players, some of the players in the team, became outraged at the Board of Education meeting last night when it was announced the season was canceled, saying the team should be able to play for the balance of the year.
Kids who didn't do anything are suffering. Now we're not going to have that closure of finishing our senior year, going out like we wanted to go out. It got taken from us for something that we didn't even know was going on.
I just don't believe that the punishment fits the crime.
I know that the county prosecutor's office doesn't waste their resources unless they think there's something credible there.
Amazing scene here, and for perspective on this, I want to bring in Randy Nathan. Randy is the president and CEO of Project Next Gen. Randy, an expert on the issue of bullying in sports. He's also authored a book titled Bullying in Sports, a guide to identifying the injuries we don't see. And I'm gonna, when you read the accounts of this, apparently from various sources in this, the gist of it was, this is a prominent high school program in New Jersey, blue-collar community in Sayreville. Freshmen that were on the team, almost without exception, if you believe the allegations, every day there'd be a signal that would go out, a wolf whistle or something, the lights would go out, and a freshman would be pinned down and would be sodomized. I can't find another word for it. And this went on, and it was obvious to, at least if you believe the reports, everybody on the team knew about the presence of this, not that all were involved. Even you get the prosecutor involved, Randy. This is the part that I don't get. I would have assumed that every parent involved in that would have been screaming bloody murder, that they would have been looking for heads to roll at the school. But instead you have an outpouring saying, hey, fine, cancel one game, but don't cancel the year. Perspective, have we lost even a scintilla? Can we have a little bit of perspective here? I can't believe the reaction when you heard this. Were you surprised?
I'm not surprised because I've been doing this and learning about the bullying in sports and hazing for quite some time. And we have developed a culture in sports that is so pervasive in terms of violence and aggression that I often talk about elite athletes and programs to talk about being aggressive and practicing and repeating and creating imbalance of power. So we ourselves as coaches and parents creating an environment which is conducive of bullying in sports. And we don't do a good enough job explaining that what we're creating you in terms of it being an athlete is also being translated in the classroom. And so hazing, it's happening. Now the thing is, all we know is that this was some kind of anonymous call into the authorities. But the moment it goes into the authorities, it becomes a criminal investigation. It's criminal. So the superintendent really has to follow the lead of what's happening within the police and the police investigation. So frankly, what he does, and I think what he's doing is based on his values and philosophies as an educator, as we talk about character development, that we've lost sight. Sports is not about scoreboard. It's not about wins and losses at this level. Kids aren't going pro. They're not going D1. What we are teaching them is about life lessons. And so this is an opportunity, whether parents like it or not, that there were kids in there that were helpless. Kids who experienced horrendous things, and no one stopped it. We've allowed this culture to exist of people being bystanders, and for once, someone with a sense of courage in terms of the superintendent stands up and says, you know what, I'm going to be a game changer. I'm going to become an upstander. I'm going to make sure our kids learn that what goes on is unacceptable, and we're going to do something about it. And I'm going to hold the entire football program, every kid, every coach accountable.
And good for the superintendent. You can argue. I have a lot of questions. If I had a kid in that program, we all played sports here, right?
Of course.
Coach always knows what's going on in the
locker
room.
Absolutely.
You can't be now well into October here and have no idea that reportedly this was going on day after day. I'm not going to do the details, but if you believe, and you can't make all this stuff up, that this was going on and no one had a clue. I mean, look what happened. I mean, Richie Incognito and Jonathan Martin on a professional level.
Correct.
What happened there? What did they think they're supposed to do? You have to send a message. Isn't that the only way these things get communicated, that they're not acceptable?
Well, that's the thing.
It's not just boys being boys.
Well, that's the people. It's boys being boys. We say that's a locker room mentality. And that was what happened when Richie Incognito and Jonathan Martin took tremendous hits from his own teammates as if what he did was being wrong. He was being treated completely inappropriate. It's aggressive, it's repetitive, and it's imbalance of power. And regardless, a 300-pound lineman was dealing with issues that were beyond the scope, and it wasn't so much hazing.
And we're talking about 14-year-old kids
and
here
now we're talking
who
about
have
14-year-old kids.
nowhere else to go.
And there is no, and that's why they don't say anything. They know what to do, because if you do say something, they don't trust adults. Their coaches aren't going to back them. And yes, two things. This is a fireable offense. Either the coach didn't know and did nothing, or if the coach didn't know, has no idea what it means to be a head coach, because you're a teacher first, an educator first, and everything else is second.
I was under the impression, Randy, and my kids aren't aged enough to get the, but that things had changed a lot from, 30 years ago or something approaching that when I was doing this or whatever. Not that I saw this, okay? And I thought schools were so much more sensitive to this now than before, given all the stories we all know about. Would I be surprised how prevalent this still is?
I think that it is extremely prevalent. It is not isolated. We see it at the pros. We see it at college. We
I'm
see it
just
at high
surprised
school.
that no coach, just from a cynic standpoint, forget about teaching right and wrong. No coach wants to be out on his you-know-what if this is going on in his or her
Correct,
locker room.
but-
I would figure they'd be the first ones dealing with this out of just self-preservation.
Correct. However, sometimes it's seen as a rite of passage. It's tradition. It's part of what we do. Now, in this situation, yeah, when it comes to sodomy, a rational human being knows it's beyond. But in some cases, some schools and some coaches, you carry equipment. You do these kind of certain things. It's part of a tradition. But then what happens is you have these kids carrying the equipment, and some knucklehead junior or senior comes around, starts poking fun at them, making name calling, and intimidating them, and it goes beyond the pale. It happens on a regular basis. It goes unsupervised. Kids don't report it, and it has changed dramatically in the last 30 years because kids are much more aware of it. And I don't think 30 years ago you get a superintendent that stands up and does it. As a matter of fact, the game goes on just like it used to, but now we know the difference.
Let me get to the reaction. It was a national story, if you remember what happened in Steubenville, Ohio, where on video, a girl passed out at a party. Two football players literally carried her around like she was a sack of potatoes, and she was sexually violated when she was basically comatose throughout the evening. The community, in the main, not in the margin, rallied in support of the football team that was being taken away from them and these star players because the girl had it coming or whatever else. It shocked the nation, or at least a lot of people, to say, who thinks that way? But I saw the scene playing out yesterday or last night and reading some of the comments.
The parent comments.
And it seemed the majority of them were saying, what are you doing, school superintendent, taking this team away? The community reaction, I guess, especially in communities where the team's so important, I think a lot of us be surprised, you know, whose side they take, right?
Well, part of it is when it comes to parents, and I'm a parent, we're crazy, we're neurotic. We don't want our kids to experience pain. We don't want our kids to experience some kind of disappointment. And kids, and nowadays kids spend and parents spend thousands of dollars in preparation with private coaches and private trainers. And if you do think about going to college, you don't have many options or many strategies, in particular football. Football, there's no club or travel. With baseball and soccer and tennis and everything else, there are travel club programs.
Friday night, what
right?
do you do, right? Yeah.
But with football, there's not. And so for some kids are very invested in that and spend a lot of money, and it's a consumer mentality. There's a return. And my return is my kid is going to get a chance to play and get a shot at maybe playing at D1 or a professional level. And we've completely lost ourselves because sports has become something so much more than the fact that it's about kids coming together, learning life lessons, learning about sportsmanship, learning about camaraderie, learning how to overcome adversity. And that's what we often forget about is parents start getting upset over umpires and officials because of bad calls or superintendents calling off seasons. But you know what? We need to help kids understand that sports is really about learning how to struggle and learn how to do right, overcome adversity. We've completely lost sight on that.
Randy, we saw a school superintendent, or at least by my lights, and I think yours as well, did the right thing. It wasn't some mealy-mouthed, well, we'll have to see, I'll pass it to a blue ribbon commission. He pulled the plug on the year here as the prosecutors are investigating this. For all the schools you visited, and all the administrators you've talked to, let alone coaches, et cetera, do you find that guy the exception, that so many are so concerned about the community's reaction if they had to clamp down, or about administrators who may not agree with their decision, or having to see the parents when they go to the supermarket on the weekend? Is that guy the norm, or is he the exception?
I would like to think there's many individuals, superintendents who are out there who would do something like that, but the power in terms of the athletics within the communities are so strong and so big in a number of the New Jersey towns, it's very difficult because of politics involved, because it is such a community organizing event.
And I should say, you're not just talking about this from the exception. You yourself are a coach right now,
Absolutely,
right? Coach
absolutely.
at the college level,
Yep,
right?
Yep.
Amazing. Randy, thank you so
Thank you.
much. All right, everybody, I want you to head over to Facebook and Twitter and sound off on our question tonight. Do you support the superintendent's decision to not just suspend, but end the football program for the balance of the year? You know, Randy and I say he did the right thing. You sound off as well on Twitter and Facebook and make your opinion heard. Okay, when we come back, we will switch gears and turn to politics. Race for governor, with a gap closing, believe it or not, between Mr. Cuomo and Mr. Astorino. New numbers are out here. It's 20 points. And you say, hey, that's a lot? Well, it's a lot less than it used to be. We'll bring in Dominic Carter to talk about that after this.